So the agenda that we've laid out for the day is to talk a little bit more about NuSecure, NuSpire, the company, and our partner program that we've identified through there. Go through, again, the market that we're in. Being MSPs yourself, you guys definitely at least see, touch, and feel some of the security aspect. We'd love to arm you and give you a little bit more background on the statistics as far as breaches and those managed security services. So not only the breaches that we're seeing and all the malware and reasons, but then also that market opportunity for you, the service provider, and what this could mean for your organization as we move forward with the evolution of technology. Specifically, we'll talk about SIEM in general. Obviously, NuSpire and what you learned about what we do at the show. We talked a lot about our flagship product, that nuSIEM, new as in NuSpire. A lot of our products carry that naming convention, but SIEM itself, we're going to educate you on the attributes, the features, and the value propositions that SIEM as a service will provide you. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the products that are out there and which may be the best fit for you. And we can go through some different challenges, whether it's a service or a product, and really how to get the most out of it, not just for your organization, but ultimately we're all in business to service some type of business, whether it be small, medium, or enterprise. These are the types of things that we would be looking for. We will also go into the program to talk a little bit more about the components of it. Again, for those of you that we spent even a little bit of time at the show discussing and talking about, you understood that we really brought to the NuSecure Partner Program a few SKUs, if you will. We productize those services so that we can then offer you different things from file integrity monitoring, what goes into our threat intelligence behind our nuSIEM tool, the cyber threat monitoring, which you learned is the people and process behind that tool, and then we can get into some different options through our service credits and the pricing and talk about the overall profits for you, the partner. So without further ado, I will jump into it. And again, I thank you all very much for your time. And just so you can get an idea, as we spoke a lot at the show, and most of our attendees here being very familiar and having those call centers and network operation centers, this is actually a shot from one of NuSpire's multiple security operation centers throughout North America. So to give you that kind of idea of those real-time people that really use a lot of these tools and what they're looking at on a regular basis so that we can respond to those types of threats in a real-time fashion. So just a visual for you there. With some help today, I'd like to introduce Mr. Stephen Caldwell, who is on our security analytics team. Stephen was represented at the show as well. So if we need to get any more technical, I'll lean on Stephen to kind of expand on some of the things that I've thrown out there or to fill in any gaps that I may have missed. On top of Stephen joining us, we have Mr. Ray Marquez, who is one of our NuSecure partner consultants. Ray has been with the organization for years and is very technical as far as the sales aspect and can give us a little bit more insight into the tools and the different things and how they apply to you, the partner. So I want to welcome Stephen and Ray, and thank you both very much for helping me out along here to better educate our audience on SIEM and why it may be important to them in their organization. Thank you, guys. Little short introduction on NuSpire Networks, the organization. Again, the NuSecure partner program was derived through that. NuSpire itself goes to market in a few different fashions, one of which is our large enterprise, which is a separate team that's looking for just that, kind of the Fortune 250, hundreds if not thousands of global sites. So the way that we penetrate the rest of the market is through valued partners like yourself. So that's why the Rob and Robin show is so valuable to NuSpire, to be able to get out there, meet hundreds of successful MSPs that are exclusively focused on growing their business. And that's what was really a great eye-opener for us, to see those types of MSPs that were looking to get into that next best thing, which is where we ultimately felt like SIEM was just that. And it's been proven with some of our existing partners and even some of our larger clients that we're using, but it's really getting to some of the finer details of what we do. So I want to instill in you that NuSpire has been at this going on close to 20 years now. We originated in 1999, so we have decades of network management and security services, and that's exclusive, pure play managed security service provider. And being MSPs, you guys are very familiar with those types of features and services that you would offer, whereas the analytics, the security of those networks are ultimately the sole focus of what NuSpire is able to provide. We do work, again, as I said, some of the world's largest and distinct companies, and you can obviously see some of the logos down below of companies that we work with. Definitely something we bring to your attention, but there's a lot of our partners in there too. So again, I think the common thread you'll see between some of the logos down there is really that one-to-many type of mentality where we can build a good partnership alliance, whether it's with a direct customer or you, the partner, to go ahead and penetrate the rest of those locations. So obviously out of this, we're looking to strengthen your brand, strengthen your existing managed services, and add the security component in there. And as you'll see on some future slides, the reasons behind that, but a very, very good growth sector that we're seeing here for some of our MSP partners. Our capabilities, we are a global organization. We are a 24/7 live humans analytics team watching that data, analyzing it, making decisions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The Security Operations Center is that acronym that we're using there, as well as our Technical Assistance Center. So think of the TAC as our people. On top of that, you heard me mention Mr. Caldwell. He is on our Security Analytics team. So that is another acronym that we've used internally here. So our Technical Assistance Center is a lot of the tiered support, level 1 through 4, everything from triage to on-site installs, break fix configuration changes, and then the analytics team that's exclusively focused on those log analytics from network devices that nuSpire has under its management. We are a master MSSP. Part of our vision is to be the benchmark for managed security service providers, which means we look to other MSSPs to see how nuSpire is approaching the market. Over the course of 20 years, obviously we've seen this space grow and grow. 20 years ago, it was a much different conversation when talking about SIEM. So again, we've evolved over time, and I can honestly tell you now that it's a really, really hot time to start looking beyond what that firewall may or may not be doing for me, or if I'm even just collecting logs in any fashion. What's that next step to better providing value to my customers, compliance, and things along that nature? So you're going to see a lot of capabilities out of nuSpire on that stance. From the stability side, again, organically grown, very private organization that has had steady growth ever since '99, and a whole slew of accolades, some of which we mentioned there. Inc. Magazine's fastest growing companies, but then we get into the security analysts. So many of you have probably heard of Gartner. nuSpire was represented on the Magic Quadrant for years. As of late, they went global. We do not have a security operations center overseas as of today, but still receive many honorable mentions and best in class, if you will, from Gartner and a lot of their analysts. Frost & Sullivan is another one where we've ranked high, Forrester, and as of late, the Info Security Products, where nuSpire took home a few different awards. And again, the one that maybe I would want to point out is the gold winner for the Managed Security Services. And I think this speaks exclusively to what the NuSecure Partner Program is doing, because it's just that. It's a program for those 4 partners to go to market immediately and take advantage of those. And I think a feather in our cap there was we were able to, kind of rank higher than some of the bigger players in this space, such as the Dell SecureWorks. So nuSpire's customization, our proprietary systems, and laser focus on security and analytics has really been what's propelled us to that next stage. So if you do decide to go into business with nuSpire, just know that we've been around the block, we've seen just about everything, and our systems continue to grow with our internal team here. So we look forward to that engagement. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk about some statistics. Why the need? We had a lot of material to put together for this PowerPoint. Normally they're a little bit more interactive, or I know this time you guys are waiting until the end for some of your questions. But this is, if you didn't know and you try to pick around some of these pieces of what's most important, I guess this would be the fear for us sales guys of what you try to put and let customers know that this is real. I mean, these things are happening, right? I mean, that compound annual growth rate, almost 70% we're seeing of security incidents. On my hard copy here, I underlined this APT. Those are your advanced persistent threats. So in years past, the hacking game was quite notoriety, right? It was just to see if they could break in, see if they could steal a password or gain access to something. Well, that game changed quite a bit over the last 10 years and became very well funded, very targeted, and very persistent. So you have advanced persistent threats. We've all heard or read the articles about antivirus being dead. Well, that's a layer. It might not be as effective as it once was. Maybe it might be really ineffective, but it still provides some value, and they're all layers of security. The advanced persistent threats play right into what a SIEM is going to be able to do for you by collecting and analyzing each of the most minute details that traverse a network. And that's in those raw logs that we'll be talking about here in a little bit of time. So you can better understand what we're up against now, and when I say us, any type of business that's connected to the internet these days. So for the small to medium size, going back to a lot of conversations myself and Trina and Stephen had with you guys at the show, it seemed the majority were between 10 users and I'll say 50, maybe 75 users. So again, small to medium small networks. These are those types of people that are going to require these types of things for compliance and different things we'll touch on in a moment. But you can also tell here, who are these breaches going after? And even at retail with under 5%, that's still a hefty number in that space just due to the amount of retail locations we have out there. Obviously, government and healthcare are leading the charge with some very serious numbers that are growing way too fast. So we have the incidents, we have the breaches. Now what? Now we got to talk about the cost. So what happens? What's the cost of doing nothing or not taking, mitigating your risk and taking due diligence? Those are two key phrases I tend to pass on a lot because, again, nothing is that silver bullet. SIEM, you'll find out here in some of these future slides, it has to occur at least once for SIEM to log it and actually notice it. Now, it doesn't mean we can't prevent it moving forward, but SIEM, at the end of the day, is taking in all of that information. We're all familiar with those edge devices. We spoke a lot about firewalls, next generation firewalls with many of the attendees. And those are your prevention methods, right, to keep out those known bad attacks, malware, code, signature. You'll see a little bit more about how we can expand that visibility for you through the use of nuSIEM. But we're seeing that the downtime, and this is what's big now too, right? It's not just the loss of information. Our security analytics team does continued educations here for NuSpire on a semi-monthly basis, and we're putting out good information for some of our enterprises and our partners to take advantage of. And a buzzword that I think is quite big in just about every business, big or small, IT or not, is ransomware. So one of the key points that our SAT analyst made was the downtime. So ransomware, we know, is terrible. It locks up your machines, but you think of any one of your customers that would have to go home and get on another computer to even Google Bitcoin to figure out how to go about getting those to even unlock the information that's rightfully theirs. So we're seeing downtime now just being a big factor, right? Because it just shuts you down and makes a very big issue for a lot of these organizations that, quite frankly, could cripple some small ones. So something we're definitely advising on and making people think twice about that, because if there's a way to notice it, a way to circumvent it and remediate it before that lockout happens, that's where that value is that SIEM and nuSIEM can provide for you. And then, of course, statistics that just keep going up as far as the cost per record and what you're able to do with better security information. So with that, let's talk a little bit more now about the opportunity. So we talked about the bad. We know what's going on out there. Every day there's a new acronym, a new type of threat, a new hacking group, and they're going out. And some of them are casting the net wide. Those would not be advanced persistent threats. The APTs are very targeted. It says I'm going after this very specific type of customer, this very specific type of hardware, and my code, my malware is designed specifically for that. So with that comes opportunity for people like us. And this was really our sole motivation for attending the show, to be able to highlight and exhibit some of these services to you, the MSP. I mean, in a short year, look at the market we're talking about here, and even going ahead to the year 2020, that is an astronomical amount of spending that's going to be going on in this place. You people attended the show to grow the business. I don't know what more could show potential growth, especially around a topic that I feel is just extremely sticky right now and allows you to grow with the customer because it's a moving target. You know, what's the biggest threat today will not be the biggest threat tomorrow. So rest assured, as long as you have that threat intelligence and people behind the scenes growing with it, you will always have the most viable solution through the nuSIEM and nuSecure partner program. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But by the spending here, you know, we see that obviously on the enterprise side, they have, I guess it could be perceived as more important because they're enterprise, but at the end of the day, you know, if you're collecting credit cards, you're collecting credit cards. If you have personal identification information, you need to be protecting that type of stuff. And at the end of the day, it goes back to what I said, mitigating your risk as a business owner, as a service provider, strengthening your service level agreements, giving better quality of service, so that at the end of the day, if and when something were to happen, you know you've done your part to either make it abundantly clear to your customers where your service levels stop or where your responsibility may go. So with these types of services, you can, obviously you're going to offer more, but you can ride the NuSpire coattails and allow us to do a lot of that heavy lifting we're looking for the MSP to partner with to go to market. The SMB market, this was an interesting stat. You know, it's growing faster, even though it's a smaller percentage right now, to the point of a quarter of it, but it's growing much faster. So that's something that should excite all of us on this call to know that some of the people we're dealing with on a regular basis, this is the type of information and services that they would be looking for. You know, and this is interesting too. So the cloud managed security services grows to 69% of the market, whereas the customer premise equipment dropping to 50%. So this can be twisted either way. NuSpire has a lot of different options. Obviously, it just boils down to the engagement of whether you want to take that traffic to the cloud before it goes out to the web through some type of proxy, if you will, or if that customer premise equipment will sit on site. But again, there's hardware somewhere. Again, through speaking through many of the conversations we had at the show, they ranged from, you know, kind of higher end as far as detailed in the technology talk. But again, kind of going back to the hardware, it exists somewhere. So if that hardware is in the cloud, and let's just stick to the gateway firewall, whether that's Fortinet, Sophos, Palo Alto, SonicWall is on-prem, or there's just a much larger device up in the cloud, whether it's with the provider, the data hosting center, whatever the case may be, similar functions are happening. You just get a lot more memory, a lot more processing power as you obviously upgrade within some of the models of these appliances. Ray, Stephen, I know I kind of went through a few slides here, but I figured I'd like to at least give you guys a chance to chime in and see if there was anything maybe you wanted to add in regards to the opportunity for managed security services, or if maybe there was something I missed or you wanted to add in regards to the cloud services versus the on-prem.
No, I think you did extraordinarily well, Tony, on explaining that. You know, as we talk to partners every day, we definitely see the opportunity for them to grow. Even if they slowly ramp these security services in, there's still a big potential to get some immediate revenue, and it kind of shows on some of your stats here. So other than that, you know, it was very well presented.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Ray. So as I move on here to the crux of why we've invited you all here today, what is security information and event management? Going through at its most basic form, and I don't want to necessarily read some of this as you guys can go through it, but it did culminate through two separate acronyms, which was the SIEM, which is the information, and then the SEM, which is the events. And so I guess what I'd ultimately start with is just think of the network device. And I think with a lot of you at the show, and even now, I think it's most easily understood to think of that gateway firewall, UTM appliance, next gen. And the reason we kind of default to that, not only is it simple to kind of to think about it that way, but the gateway really tracks all traffic that traverses that network, at least through the gateway, right? Whether it's a user, a Windows machine, a switch, a server. As information travels through the internal network, it traverses that gateway appliance where your internet connection would come into your network, and there's where all that logging takes place of the information and events that either come from the outside in or from the inside out. So instead of just monitoring or running a SIEM on one workstation, that's all the information we would get is whatever that one workstation was able to tell us. But because we're talking about these gateway, firewall, and next-gen appliances, we're getting a lot of source and destination information from what's coming from the outside in and obviously from the inside out. So I'll give Ray and Stephen another chance here in a moment to talk about, when it comes to the reporting and really how much we get to see. But as I referenced earlier, it's really the finest details you can receive from a network to give you that information. And it's a piece. It's just that. It's one piece. I mean, one device in a given day could generate hundreds of thousands to millions of logs and events. Obviously, it all pertains to how many users or how much traffic's going through it. But very quickly, you'll find yourself in that big data realm. Again, I referenced NuSpire networks and our multiple security operations centers taking in north of 40,000 devices under managed, tens of billions of logs coming in on a regular daily basis, and quickly somehow trying to make sense of that. Some of you may have heard that reference I use. It's trying to find that needle in the stack of needles and really figure out quickly what needs to be remediated. So as you'll see here, some of the capabilities of any SIEM technology. Now this is the product. So I'm going to talk about a SIEM product, whether it be nuSIEM, LogRhythm, QRadar, AlienVault, LogLogic, AlertLogic, all SIEM tools. And I guess I'll take nuSIEM out of it because it was never built as to, just a product where we ship it out in a box with an instruction manual. So that's a little bit different. But some of these now, what you're looking for are these different types of collectors. How am I going to get the information? Any SIEM tool needs to ingest that log data from the devices that are reporting to it. So you need to be able to figure out how much storage and where you need to put that. How long are you going to save that data? Where is it going to be parsed? If you don't need it today, where does it need to go? Because again, something that is fairly common in SIEM is as logs are ingested, doesn't mean that right then and there. The big piece of SIEM that kind of separates it is this correlation piece. And that's where it takes all that large data and starts putting together the story, if you will. There's never one single log that just tells you the whole story. It's very similar to just, seeing a log that says somebody remoted into an R&D server. That log by itself really doesn't mean much of anything. It just documents that somebody logged into an R&D server. But if we could correlate other data together and let you know that that one person was from marketing and it was done at 3:31 a.m. on a Saturday, now we might have an incident. Now that might be worth drilling down into, looking deeper, understanding if that was actually a legitimate action from a legitimate user. So that's where the correlation feature really starts to separate itself from, and I would put up here event and data collectors. Some of the advice you'll find online is if you've never even used SIEM, start with just collecting logs, because that is a service. Collecting logs, it's an unorganized way of doing it, but at least you have them. There's no organization, there's no alerting, there's no parsing, there's no correlation. It's just like throwing them all in a closet. You know it's in there, but you don't know where. If you ever need it one day, you can go sort through and take your time. If it's really important, you can dedicate a lot of time to trying to find it. Where the correlation comes into, you've now moved from a log storage management solution into SIEM, and you're starting to get features that are exactly correlation, aggregation. Aggregation tells us how many times something happened. I go back to the analogy of online banking. I think we're all fairly familiar with what happens if we fat finger a login 3 separate times. That's that threshold. Says, you know what? I'm not sure if you're a legitimate user. So you got to call in, give me your mom's maiden name, your pet's name and what have you, and we'll reset your password. That's a safety measure because the system has now been tipped off that you may not be who you are. So, but there's also nothing that says I can't try twice a day to try and go in if I'm a nefarious, attacker. So again, by collecting each and every log that traverses a network, you're still monitoring that type of stuff. And you can see different variations of visibility of what's transpiring on a network. The normalization, this is really big. I would relate this back to a little bit of behavioral analytics. So again, if you monitored anything, your house, when people come and go, if events, when certain users log in, when they don't, the more you monitor anything, the more intelligent you become about it, and it's easier to start spotting those ebbs and flows to be like, that's really strange. Why is Stephen in on a Sunday night at 2:29 a.m. and why is he in this server? So those types of things are easily identifiable, reportable, and then obviously to take action from there. You obviously want to have the support. Now this is really big too. SIEM out of the box is just that, like anything else we buy out of the box. Very default setting, no real playbook, because the manufacturer that sold you that has to really better understand your environment. That's where professional services or SIEM as a service comes into play. So obviously one of the things we did with nuSIEM was take all that guesswork out of it. It is a cloud-based SIEM that stores, collects, and does all of these features you see here from the correlation, aggregation, and the reporting. But what we can do at that point is give you the people and the support behind it so that you have threat intelligence built into your SIEM system on day one. You have security analysts fine-tuning, watching that traffic, talking with you on a lower level, if you will, to better, in layman's terms, if you will, to explain what's possible, but then through conversation and listening to you to better understand what type of itemized reports or maybe where thresholds need to be or different things that need to be built into that SIEM. But the nuSIEM is owned and managed by NuSpire. We have all that access and availability through the portal to be able to give any of our partners any visibility. It's your customers, it's their data, it's just our technology. The log management, the user monitoring, the application monitoring, the audit reporting kind of go into that as well. Each one kind of succeeds the next as far as what we can do. And of course, from a compliance standpoint, which I know is coming up here on one of these slides, it's absolutely a compliance play. I mean, whether it's, we went back on this other slide talking about the different verticals, whether it's government, healthcare, retail, all of them have very specific and very targeted compliance regulations that I'm sure we all sell on that a little bit today. This will give you just even that much more clout when you're in those compliance type scenarios. Ray, anything you'd like to add on SIEM and a little bit more on this slide of what you think I might be able to further educate our listeners on?
No, I thought those look like the top categories. The one thing that I would like to drive home is there is a real big difference, and you kind of hit on this, between buying a product and getting default settings within a SIEM. There's a big difference between that and a best practice or some guidance when purchasing a SIEM tool. You'll definitely feel the value of the latter one almost immediately, because that's going to kind of let you hit the ground running and let you feel confident that you're looking and reporting on the right types of security events. And those are the things that a good partner program should bring to the table. And without trying to make it hard sell for NuSecure, that's one of those things that we do bring into our SIEM service when you do purchase it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I wrote down just a handful of different, just things to kind of put in your head for really what we're being able to see, and it's all these different abnormalities, if you will, right, from that normalization, that baselining. So if we're seeing high volume transfers, we're seeing new settings at off times, we're seeing high rate of logins, decrease in logs, remote logins, connections from out of country IPs. Just a small smidge of the things. I mean, the reporting and the drill down goes into the hundreds of reports. And again, you have the expertise on your side, which it's just paramount. Because otherwise, it's a lot of Googling and a lot of reading and a lot of use cases, which is why a lot of the forums I even jumped in just to kind of prepare, because again, I've been organically educated here through NuSpire over the last 13 years, so it's very centered to my universe. But understanding, and a lot of the advice and forums I saw was just, it's not even worth just jumping into SIEM if it's that first time. You really need to step into it, because if you try to come in the bottom of the ninth inning, you're going to find yourself quickly underwater, and then it's, you almost get a bad taste in your mouth for SIEM, but it's really about how it went about, how it was implemented. So again, if you have any questions, reach out to us if anything. Yes, of course, we represent NuSecure, but this is what this is too, an education. we want to work with you, we want to talk to you, and we can work through any of the questions you may have. So why is SIEM more important than ever? We also talked about at the show to a lot of the MSPs we talked to is really what RMM did for you guys early on before you had remote access to any type of machine. It changed how the MSP was able to really provide even more value and do it in a quicker, more efficient way. So even though SIEM and RMM are a little bit different, that's where I'm going here. SIEM is really taking that. It's what the port blocking firewall that was very Boolean and had no AV, no IPS, no content filtering, things like that. That's what the UTM and Next Gen was able to do. So of course, really good stuff, right? Well, now I guess the way I've kind of always phrased it and I look at it is, those are good for preventing the known attacks. Any UTM appliance that has that bundled license, now we could have a bake-off between a WatchGuard and a Palo Alto to see who has more definitions, who has more engineers in their R&D lab, and I'm not discrediting that. I'm just saying they're all going to say they have IPS, they're all going to say they have IDS and AV, but at the end of the day, those IPS are those known attacks, and they have to be noticed, they have to be researched by some lab, and then they have to be given a fingerprint, a signature, if you will. And again, very, very important. But what that device cannot identify as a threat will be allowed into the network. And at that point, SIEM is the chance you have now. So fine, it got allowed in, but maybe it's blocking it going back out, right? If it's some type of botnet looking to phone home and get back to that command and control server. So at least those devices and those next-gen devices can block that malicious activity from going back out. But SIEM allows us to do the analysis and the background behind it. Who requested it? Where was it coming from? Have we seen it before? So we'll talk more about threat intelligence and how nuSpire can kind of flex to give you just that much more visibility. Well, let's talk a little bit about compliance, as we mentioned, right? All these main verticals have to deal with their regulations. PCI is very big and very detailed, the payment card industry. So any of your customers accepting credit cards, again, whether they're a level 4 merchant or all the way up to a level 1, level 1s have to have their on-site assessment, the completion of their rocks delivered, whereas, your tier 4s are just filling out that self-assessment questionnaire. That's a type of service where you can definitely make them feel more confident when they check the box, if you will, that they're doing certain things. And that's where the nuSecure partner program comes in too. We've designed packages around log storage that are specific to PCI so that you're retaining those logs and have them reportable for over a year. HIPAA is one of the more stringent ones for healthcare. HIPAA's requirement is saving logs for up to 7 years. So there isn't a device, at least on the edge of the UTM space without some type of offsite backup, that's going to be able to perform that for you. So as we talked about with SIEM, there's the reportable data and then the archive. The archive is where we keep all log data because, as I mentioned before, may not be the compelling log to say trigger an alert today, but something we see later today or tomorrow very much could be the link to that older log that kind of completes that mystery for us, if you will. So data is power, and we don't let any of that go because we want to see. The more we can see, the more visibility we have, the more value we give back to you, our partners, which, in essence, is what you're giving to your end locations. Operations support from disparate systems into a single pane of glass. Again, we're agnostic. Anything with an IP address that creates system logs is available to log to nuSIEM. So it's not, some of you may be familiar or have those management systems where, whether it's a Fortinet and you have your FortiAnalyzer, obviously that threat intelligence is very Fortinet focused, right? They have not taken into account what SonicWall or McAfee or Sophos or Barracuda has been able to uncover. nuSpire takes in threat intelligence from every manufacturer, so we are able to glean the best of all breeds. And that's just one of our 4 forms of threat intelligence, and I'll get into a few more of those as we go back. But this allows us to really, and as you get into the portal, to start seeing all that data. And I think of it as an upside-down pyramid, right, where it's real wide at the top, and then as you start to drill down, you get to the crest. and you can actually boil any type of event down to a single raw log, which again takes time, but you have the expertise on our side, you have the horsepower within the technology. We make it really simple for you guys to sign and go to market quickly under your brand, even if it's something you were interested in, to tout that. But we'll talk about that on the later slides. Zero-day threat detection, very big. Some of the best malware out there, they know they're on the clock. So when they get into a network, they know they got to make it hard and fast. Obviously, the longer it goes on, the benefit for them. But all of our technologies are built in to better have zero-day threat detection, so that the sooner you know about it, the less loss you have, and you've mitigated your risk from that stance. APTs, very similar. Zero-day and APTs, I'd put similar as far as their sophistication and the different things they'll do, but they use a combination of attack vectors and methods, and it's really some of the most advanced threats we've seen out there on the market. So the best way to get behind it is to keep fine-tuning that information so that we can trigger those alerts as fast as possible. I touched a little on the forensics, and that goes back to the storing and the historical logs. That allows us to quickly go through that information, and through court-admissible forensics investigations. NuSpire SOX has received many calls from legal authorities when something nefarious has happened on a customer's network. And at that point, again, because it's the details, the devil's in the details. If it happened, it's in there. So I guess that's another good, it's the total package when it comes to being able to see everything. Now, did you alert on it? I don't know. I can only speak to what nuSIEM and the validity of that. But many times people are collecting this stuff. I mean, years ago, I remember the Target attack. I mean, they were notified. They just didn't do anything about it. So having this type of horsepower is only good if you're really exercising it. So we talk about SIEM, and I'm hoping you're getting a little bit better understanding of what we're doing and how this technology works for you. Again, collecting all of that raw log information from network devices all the way from the gateway down to the desktop if you so chose. Again, for some of your higher profile customers, they may want that. Not just their firewall, but a couple servers, and want you to have the desktops, the routers, whatever the case may be. But for the sake of the conversation and to keep it fairly simple to follow, we'll talk about those gateway devices and all the information from there. Well, what are some of these pitfalls? What are the challenges if I decide to get into this SIEM game? And some of this is more from the product side. So if I were to go out and just invest, I don't know, $500,000 or so into a logarithm solution or something along those lines, what can I expect from there? And Stephen may be able to attest. We're very proud to have him and all of our security analysts, but these guys are not easy to come by. Not only do they require a little bit higher grade pay because of their intelligence and their capabilities, but these are the types of things where, at least in our markets, we see an unemployment rate of 0. This is, I'm not saying you can't grow to become a security engineer, but to think you're just going to turn your network operations center into a security operations center, or I'm going to change my break fix guy into a security analyst, that definitely doesn't happen overnight. And again, it's proportional to your results, right? The people you have fine-tuning, managing, upkeeping your SIEM are a clear relation to the output of what you're getting out of it. So NuSpire has many security analysts that work directly with customers, but then also, and that's why we've separated out some of the NOC and SOC, some of our technical assistance engineers, as well as our security analysts. So you get a little bit of all of that depending on what solution you need. So no one monitoring the system, even though alerts are firing. That's what we just spoke about on the last slide, right? So you got to see this all the way through. It's very CapEx in the beginning, right? If you are going to purchase, and this goes back to that on-prem equipment, there's a lot of different ways you can go about, but at the end of the day, you need a lot of storage, right? We talked about how many logs just NuSpire is taking in from the tens of thousands of devices we have under management. It's a very big upfront investment. And so it's typically something that might not be the best fit for you, especially if you're not going to be watching it and grabbing all those alerts as they come through. With the threat information, it's tough. So understanding the difference between threat data and threat intelligence, The raw feeds of threat intelligence, when it comes through just that raw data, that's just that log collection, right? You have it, but you don't know what you have. Threat intelligence says, okay, I know I have X amount of logs, but in these logs I have this, 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 and this. So it goes back to security analysts we have, and I told you I'd talk a little bit more about our threat intel, and that's going out, doing different types of malware hunts where we're looking for it, not just waiting for it to come to us. We have best-of-breed manufacturers all reporting to us, meaning, again, your Fortinets, your SonicWalls, your Palos, and that allows us to take a lot of threat intel directly from that manufacturer, and not to mention a lot of just social feeds and things that we're getting that's available on the web and different types of groups that we work with. So again, we're always expanding the number of those, but we're utilizing every threat vector out there to strengthen our threat intelligence security posture. So I guess the point to make too, no matter what you're working with, the cool part about the NuSecure program is it is agnostic. So if you're taking over a customer's network, you just won a new customer and they have I don't know, an obscure device, again, as long as it's something that NuSpire has seen semi-regularly before, or there's a good business driver behind it, we'd love to start working with you and allow you that ability to not have to rip and replace. The volume information, this is huge because quickly, once you turn it on, you're going to get flooded. Now, do you have the resources to sort that out, or do you just tune them out and you're never looking at them anymore? These are all decisions, and I guess that's why those forums said, get in the shallow end first if you were to try and take this on yourself to make sure you're vested, because it is costly, it's a long road to hoe, it is worth it. NuSpire is living proof of it, but this is what we've chosen to do, and we're hoping that we can make some good alliances here to strengthen your guys' brands. We talked a little bit about why. I mean, these are those use cases, and there's no secret here now that ransomware is everywhere. It's very, very disruptive, it's scary, and even like that Sony hack, right? What did they do? They didn't really steal. They didn't steal anything too valuable except people's thoughts, right? I mean, they exposed all those emails, and so now you're seeing how they can socially hack people to change. I mean, we have a presidential debate going on. It's super interesting to hear about all the things that have transpired over electronically there too, to better understand what's being released, who's being exposed, what if some of your most private emails and thoughts, right? So at this point, really, it's only what we're thinking is private for now, and what we want to do is start to give people the idea that you need to think about this stuff, because anything that's connected, which is just about anything these days, to the Internet of Things, these types of cases can happen. So we're detecting different types of bots. We're detecting all different types of malware. We're giving you the ability through a portal to see, touch, and feel that data. But I suppose what I want to hammer home more than anything, too, is through our cyber threat monitoring, you're really getting the people and process behind it. Ray, why don't I hand this one over to you for the NuSecure Partner Program overview, if you wouldn't mind sharing with our audience a little bit more just about the program and how we work.
Absolutely. What you're looking at, right, because the partner, if I were to explain the partner program in general, basically we're here to take, whether you're an MSP looking to go to market with some security services, or you're a full-blown MSSP and just looking to better some of your services, or maybe close a gap with some the products that just don't do that. That's kind of why we're here and why we're designed the way we're designed. But what you're looking at here basically is one of our flagship products. This is our nuSIEM product. This is the one that's a great starting point. This has great, I know we're here a little bit to talk about revenue. This is the one that you're going to have the great margins on, because you're going to know what you're going to pay for the service. You're going to be able to then, change that into some immediate revenue. But some of the key features and differentiators with our SIEM versus some of the others, I just want to point out on this page. There's a lot of words here, but I'll just point a little bit of some of those out. And basically, the back-end infrastructure is a little bit different than most SIEMs that are out there, almost all of them. And what this does is it creates a scalable product for us, for you, and for your clients. So when you're in those client meetings and you may take on a bigger client than you're used to, you don't have to worry, can the SIEM take this many firewalls in, or this many edge devices, or even this many devices in general, regardless of what they are. So we have that scalability, and we offer it to you. And what that does also is it lets everything run really efficient. So you're really getting a highly efficient tool to do your monitoring, to do your reporting, and those types of things. And as you go down through some of these A big question we're always asked, who's hosting this? Of course, we're hosting this. This is our cloud-based product. It's through our certified data center. So you have the full redundancy there. So you're not worrying about maintaining another client device, right? And this is where, if you would like some more specific information about this, we can go through a full demo of this product where it shows you we'll show you how to set up a simple alert. We'll give you some best practices. We'll show you what other people ask for, right? Because we definitely have our ear to the ground here at NuSecure, and we talk to partners every day and say, what are some of the struggles that you're seeing even before they even buy or even think about purchasing the product. So we have all that information, and it's at your disposal how you want to use it. So we definitely cover both ends of the spectrum. Again, this is by far one of our flagship products, nuSIEM, and it's powering not just the partner program, but it's powering some of the largest some of the largest enterprises in the U.S. use the same tool.
That's a great point, Ray. And we're taking that enterprise solution we have, and we've whittled it and been able to customize it so that it's rebrandable to the MSP, the ISP, the MSSP that's looking to take NuSpire proven technology and go to market with it. So that's a great overview to give you a better idea of kind of where NuSpire is at and what the NuSecure program can do for you. We do have a few questions that I've seen come in over time, and I'm looking here. I have about 5 more slides left. And so what I'm going to do is take the ones that pertain to these pieces here. One of the ones that came through talks a little bit about, they're referencing some of my comments about threat intelligence and maybe what might separate one from the other. I might tap Stephen here in a moment to kind of add on to anything that I'm going to leave. I'll give you a little bit of where I can leave off as far as our file integrity monitoring, and then I'm going to lead into our threat intelligence. The file integrity monitoring is just that. It's another value add as well as a component for compliance that will allow NuSIEM to be able to track and monitor any files that have been altered, moved, deleted, saved, different things like that. So anything that's touched, so that you have that track record and the logs, if you will, to go back and see what has been changed. So again, you see the term on here, fingerprinted, and that allows us to do just that and track a lot of this information. So just from a security aspect, so as these types of things are being modified, you have, again, it leads back to that smoking gun. How did this happen? Who did it do? Where did it come from? And who's responsible? So it's giving us, ultimately you, a lot of that firepower. Now on the threat intel, this is definitely that piece. I touched a little bit here about the technical, tactical, operational, and strategic. We talked a lot about that piece. Stephen, was there anything you might add in regards to threat intelligence and what you and the other SAT members do to make nuSIEM so powerful?
Oh yeah, we correlate and aggregate basically anything that alerts in our system as a threat that gets flagged and put into a potential threatened database, and then we go through and we curate that based on, we take out the false positives, we, really examine each threat as it comes in. It's really hard to keep up with this amount of data, so we've kind of automated that process to help us sift through there. I think currently we're up to like 3.1 million potential threats that are just for the last 30 days. I think about 45,000 in the last 5 minutes. We're able to cross-reference all of that across all types of UTM devices. Anything that matches anything that's currently in our curated threat intelligence database is going to fire off an alert and kick off an investigation into the event and track down the potential threat.
Great, great. Thank you very much. Those are some staggering numbers you threw out there as far as what you guys are doing and how quickly that transpires. Thank you very much. Another piece here that I think some of you spoke about or we showed you at the convention, and that was the cyber threat monitoring that we acronym the CTM. So there's really 2 offerings through the program. The nuSIEM, which is consider that the horse that's going to be taking in and pulling from all those devices to be able to take in all those logs, do all the things that Stephen and his team are doing to correlate, aggregate, and spit out alerts. So at that point, something has to happen. The SIEM has done its job. It took in all that big data, it matched it against everything else, it took in threat vectors, and it said, these X amount of alerts need to be addressed. Well, now the question is who? So we realize that some of our partners might have some of this intel internally and say, we'll take those alerts. If that's the case, the nuSIEM will work just fine for you, and again, still be a very big value add to take all that data and give you true positive, meaningful alerts. In the event you have a high-profile customer, you don't have the internal resources, you don't want, or if you do have the resources, you don't want them doing this. You want to keep them doing what they normally do. The cyber threat monitoring is an option for you. And this is where our people, the Stephen Caldwells of the world, become yours. And they take those alerts, and they go through it, and they get down to the nitty-gritty as far as what needs to happen from a remediation standpoint. And at that point, you're getting a phone call, some type of direct, notification that this alert was triggered, this engineer grabbed it, here's the analysis that was done, here's the recommended fix. So you will always still be communicating with your end users, but the CTM allows you to take highly skilled engineers that nuSpire has obtained and continues to work and obviously go hand in hand with nuSIEM. So you can pick and choose which customers you may want to apply that cyber threat monitoring to as opposed to which ones you don't. So again, that's something for you guys to consider. And I know at least some of you, we kind of went through our pricing model. I don't want to get too much into it here because it does deserve just a little bit of attention. We've built it off of service credits based on different types of devices. I will just point out a few highlights that the pricing goes on tiers. The larger the tier, the larger the device. The larger the device, the more logs. The more logs, we can presume the more alerts, therefore the more work. So you can tell that there's more credits required as you go up. But the key that I'll also point out is that this program was built for longevity. We would hope and look for any of our partners to grow with us over the years as our technology continues to evolve. We'd look for you to be with us. And I guess at the bottom line, what you need to know is that we have a very low entry level, $199 a month, but that boils down to a $2.65 credit rate, and you can keep driving that down. So as you start billing out more, your cost is going down with nuSpire. We find that to be a very attractive attribute to the system. Again, reach out to NuSecure, Ray, who's on the line with us, Trina Barnes, who you met at the show, myself, we're all happy to help. NuSecure, NuSecure.com. NuSecure.com will get you. We have an info link on there if you don't have any of our direct information. We'd be happy to reach back out and go through the pricing with you. I will also highlight, too, that we offer the white label branded interface. So then anything of the reporting, anything on the portal side allows you, the customer, to drive your brand. And so I think maybe as we round out some of the pricing here, I will also, because I have 4 other questions now around the pricing, and we had this a lot at the show too. What should I charge for this type of service? Again, Ray, Trina, and myself, very happy to work with you, give you some ideas, but something we put together for those smaller type devices, those tiers, you can look at, and these are the 2 different nuSIEM offerings we have, 200 days of storage, live storage, or 400 days. 400 days was that PCI package I referenced earlier in the webinar. So you can start to better understand what that profit may look like for you. And now don't forget, from the nuSpire stance, you're going to be paying less than $10 a month for some of this stuff. As little as, I think for the tier 0, you can get 25 of them in there for the $199 a month. So again, something we can talk about with each of you on a one-off stance, but there's a good, healthy amount of margin as we work together. And ultimately, I want to thank you all very much. I think unbelievably, I had to speed through the last 4, but we've made it through the slides. I want to thank you. Hopefully you walk out of this with a little better understanding about SIEM technology in general. Ultimately shared a lot about how the nuSIEM service combined with cyber threat monitoring is a huge asset, we feel, for any MSP or ISP looking to enter this space overnight, gain recurring monthly revenue, and start knocking off some of these very spending and effectiveness, some of the major things we're seeing people opening their wallets for and looking for from a compliance standpoint. So we look very much forward to working with you. I thank you again very much, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon and a better holiday. Thank you all very much for your time.